Imagine the scene. A kingdom in limbo, a dying monarch shivering in his bed, and the vultures already circling the throne. It feels like the season finale of a high-stakes political drama, doesn't it? But this isn't fiction. We are diving into the transition from King David to Solomon.
It really is the original Game of Thrones. You have the aging hero, David, who can literally no longer keep warm, representing the fading of an era. And then you have the power vacuum. It's a dangerous moment. In the ancient world, a slow transition usually meant civil war.
And right on cue, we have Adonijah. He's the oldest surviving son. He's handsome, he's got the chariots, and he decides, I don't need to wait for dad to die. I'm the king.
That's the classic mistake of the usurper. Adonijah looks the part, right? He gathers the military support, Joab the general, and the religious establishment, Abiathar the priest. He throws a massive coronation party. But there's a glaring omission in his guest list. He doesn't invite Nathan the prophet, and he doesn't invite Solomon.
It's fascinating how he tries to bypass the spiritual authority. He thinks politics and muscle are enough, but Nathan is the ultimate political operator here. He sees the coup happening and immediately goes to Bathsheba.
Nathan is brilliant. He knows that if Adonijah takes the throne, it's a death sentence for Solomon and Bathsheba. So they orchestrate this intervention in David's bedroom. It's desperate, urgent. They remind David of his oath. And this is where the story shifts gears rapidly. David, who seemed so passive and frail, suddenly wakes up.
He does. The old lion roars one last time, but I love the contrast here. Adonijah is out there with chariots and 50 runners. Very flashy. David orders Solomon to be put on a mule.
Exactly. It sounds funny to modern ears, but that mule was the symbol of kingship in peace. Adonijah was signaling a military takeover. Solomon was riding into Jerusalem on the king's own beast, signaling legitimate succession. And the noise. The text says the people rejoiced so loudly, the earth shook.
Which ruins Adonijah's party pretty quickly.
It destroys it. The guests scatter in terror. Adonijah runs to the altar for sanctuary, and for a moment it looks like there might be mercy. Solomon says, essentially, if he behaves, he lives. But then we move into 1 Kings chapter 2, and things get dark.
Yeah, let's talk about that. David gives his final instructions to Solomon. It starts beautifully. Walk in God's ways, keep his statutes. But then he pulls out a hit list. He basically tells Solomon, deal with Joab and deal with Shimei. It feels vindictive for a man who wrote the Psalms, doesn't it?
It does if you look at it superficially. But think about the Psalms we read alongside this. Psalm 94, O Lord God, to whom vengeance belongs. Or Psalm 37, the wicked plot against the just, but their sword shall enter their own heart. David isn't just settling scores. He's securing the kingdom's foundation. Joab had murdered men in peacetime. Shimei had cursed the God-anointed king. David is telling Solomon that a kingdom built on righteousness cannot tolerate unresolved treachery at its core.
So Solomon becomes the agent of that justice.
Precisely. And Adonijah seals his own fate. He asks for Abishag, David's nurse, as a wife.
That seemed like such a strange request. Why did that trigger Solomon to execute him?
In that culture, taking the former king's concubine or nurse was a claim to the throne. It was Adonijah saying, I'm still the rightful heir. Solomon saw right through it. He realized Adonijah would never stop plotting. So the purge begins. Adonijah, Joab, Shimei, they are all removed.
It reminds me of Psalm 37 again. I have seen the wicked in great power, spreading himself like a green bay tree. Yet he passed away, and behold, he was not.
That is the perfect parallel. You look at Adonijah or Joab, and they seem invincible. They have the armies, the influence. But because they weren't aligned with God's will, they vanished like smoke. Meanwhile, Solomon's kingdom is firmly established.
It's a heavy lesson. We often think of wisdom as just being smart or philosophical, but here, wisdom looks like decisiveness. It looks like knowing when to show mercy and when to cut off a threat.
And it also ties into Psalm 71, which is the prayer of an old man. Do not cast me off in the time of old age. David's body was failing, but his legacy was preserved because he entrusted it to the right successor, and ultimately, to God. The chaos of the transition was stabilized not just by Solomon's sword, but by the fulfillment of a divine promise.
So, as we wrap up, we're left with this image of a kingdom that is finally at peace, but the cost was high. It forces us to ask, what are we building our lives on? Are we relying on chariots and horses, our own maneuvering, or are we waiting for the king to establish us?
That's the question. History is full of Adonijahs who grasp for power and lose it all. But the quiet confidence of trusting the promise? That's where the real throne is established.
A powerful place to end. The text is ancient, but human nature hasn't changed a bit. Thanks for listening, everyone.
See you next time. God bless.